We say security validation. That seems an extremely broad topic. What is the spectrum of what we're trying to validate here?
When you think about all the controls that we've invested time, money, and effort in over time, that could be series of even several years, really, I think at the end of the day, we need to understand what is critical to our business. And that's going to vary, but we want to start there and base it and focus it on that risk-based approach.
You have like a control, you have how that control is designed, and you have kind of evidence that that control is operating effectively. And that's how a lot of the compliance frameworks take it. But then from an operational point of view, we have different types of controls. We've got administrative controls and technical controls and other types of controls. And they have to be validated in that same way. And so I think without that, you really don't have assurance that you're, in control of your environment.
Some good questions came in. I want to address them right now from Mike Wilkes. How can you ensure you align the internal security controls with external, or for the outside in validation verification?
And it's almost like taking the same approach but with two different angles. And both of those controls should essentially, if you have a SOC or some type of incident response procedure, you should be responding to both of those. So what I would do is test systematically from both ends, and almost like a dual pronged approach. See where beachheads or where perimeter, the quote unquote perimeter, could be crossed, as well as have an understanding of if something has already happened, what is the risk exposure internally.
We have a control framework. And so that control framework is almost agnostic of whether it's, looking at it from an internal perspective or an external perspective. But then what you have to do is you have to drill that down to the next level for that specific team and say, okay, so here's what this means for you. So DevOps, here's what this means for you, for this particular set of group of controls that you're responsible for. And you really need to kind of explain it to them. And I always go back to explain to them as this is how you can deliver a quality service or product as a DevOps engineer.
What are the most valuable technologies or most important technologies in your stack that you need to validate?
Controls technologies that involve identity management. The reason I say that is because the compromised identity is always what the attackers are going after, whether that's actual identities, machine identities, anything, because the access control and access to data is extremely important. Now, once you, after that, I would say probably the tools that are monitoring, because we want to and hopefully have an understanding of day-to-day operations and known goods. So if we see deviations from that,
you have to come into your environment and assess to understand kind of what you're working with and where you're at. I think once you've done that, then it's really a matter of looking at it from just a pure risk perspective. So where's our biggest risk? Where's our biggest exposure? Whether that's true cyber risk, or if it's maybe some regulatory risk or something like that. And then I think you have to, the key component that I think a lot of security leaders miss is you have to then validate that what you're prioritizing aligns with what the business thinks that should be prioritized. When you first step into a situation, typically because there's some security that's built up, or if it's a brand new environment or company, there's a lot of opportunity where you'll get a lot of support from the business. But after that, once you've been operating for a while, that's where you really need to build those relationships so you can articulate that risk well.
Here's a good question from David. What do you do with the systems that the business is too afraid of downtime to validate? And do you need downtime to validate?
It's a negotiation with the business of saying, look, if we don't do the validation, this system may not be available. And if it's that critical, we need to validate that it can be available to make sure that it's running smoothly before we hit prime time. So what I like to see happen is have a negotiation. We're going to have outages. They're either going to be planned outages or unplanned, or maybe both. But for us to have the least amount of unplanned outages, we need to have some planned ones. It's working with the business, working with the stakeholders to understand that there's no system out there that's going to be up 100% all the time. No system in the history of the universe has had that kind of uptime ever.
We talked a little earlier, what's stopping it? It's really just getting started. And I think really what our goal here is to make sure that everyone incorporates security validation into their security program, because it really is essential. And to Dan's point, it is a sign of maturity, but just because you might sit there and say, oh, we're not there yet, it's extremely important to make sure that you're ready, and we can absolutely help you with that. We'd love to talk to you about automating some of those tasks, making it a little bit easier. So check out our website, our YouTube, hit me on LinkedIn. it's all good.
I'll speak to the people out there that maybe aren't doing a great job of this and they might feel like a little overwhelmed. Just start small. So take a look at, what's most important to you and start validating that. Also, have the business jump in on partnering with you as this as well, because, this is a quality issue at the end of the day, and higher quality means happier customers, means better outcomes for everybody. And so that would be my advice.